Welcome to A Space to Speak Your Mind,
a radio programme and a podcast about mental health and well-being.
Made by people with lived experience.
in association with Cornwall Mind.
We do occasionally cover subjects that some listeners may find distressing.
For more information, help and support, please visit cornwallmind.org.
A Space to Speak Your Mind with Cornwall Mind for better mental health.
Welcome to the March programme of A Space to Speak Your Mind. I'm Richard, and on this month's show, with Children's Mental Health Week having just taken place, I'll be welcoming Tom Crombie from King's Inter High to talk about how this year's theme of Let's Connect aims for parents to check in with their kids to talk openly about how they're feeling. As the third National Day of Reflection approaches, A Space to Speak Your Mind's contributor Nathan will be chatting with Jane Murray, bereavement counsellor, and Marie Curie, bereavement support team lead, to find out more about this unique day to spotlight the grief which affects millions of us. With more than a third of us unaware of just how many former military personnel we have in the UK, there is a small but significant group who develop trauma-related mental health problems and who struggle to leave the battlefield behind, as Robert Marsh, the director of Fundraising for Combat Stress Charity, will explain. I'll be catching up with Joe to find out what's happening at Cornwall Mind this month, and I'll be chatting to A Space to Speak Your Mind's JJ about how gaming helps his well-being.
A Space to Speak Your Mind with Cornwall Mind.
This year's Children's Mental Health Week took place recently. The theme was Let's Connect, with the aim for parents to check in with their kids to talk openly about how they're feeling. Tom Crombie from King's Inter High is a former teacher and is passionate about promoting mental health for kids and cultivating a supportive and positive schooling environment. Good to have you on the show, Tom.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So can you tell me a bit about your experience as a former teacher, about how children's mental health was at the time that you were teaching, and do you think it's changed in the last period of time?
Yeah, I started my teaching career about 16, 17 years ago. So at a very different time and at a time where we didn't talk about children's mental health, certainly to the extent that we do today. Now, that's not to say that, mental health challenges amongst young people were not there. They absolutely were, and they always have been throughout history, I would imagine. But it's refreshing to see that in the last few years, we have started to recognize that mental health amongst all of us, but particularly amongst the young developing complex minds of young people and children, is absolutely paramount and is more of a priority to talk about and to recognize now than it's ever been before. And my last 6 years in the world of education has been running an online school where we educate young people around the globe, and a very large proportion of young people come to us to do their education in a way that works for them, and they're coming to us with their own mental health challenges. Sometimes are brought on by the traditional bricks and mortar school environment that is great for so many young people, but not right for all. So what we are advocating is choice, allowing every young person to be able to achieve success, whatever that looks like to them, and to achieve academic success, but in a different pathway to getting there.
Do you think it's mainly because the children are more open about talking about mental health? I'm thinking back to my own childhood. It's something we would never have brought up. Do you think because there's now the open discussion and also that the teachers are there to support them?
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a shift, and certainly I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, particularly in the last 5 years, and particularly over the course of the pandemic, of course, that we've started to recognise that mental health is important. We talk about physical health. We've always had a clear understanding of that, but for whatever reason, we don't or haven't spoken about mental health as much. It's certainly something that is more and more prevalent. We understand more about it now. We understand the impact that it has, and I think we could probably all admit that at some point in our day or week or even our year, we all have mental health challenges, however big or small they may be. And it's absolutely imperative that we address these, that we talk about them. And of course, when I was growing up and, as I said, started my career as a teacher, these simply weren't talked about. It was seen as defeatist almost to acknowledge that you would have a mental health challenge. And, there's still to this day, certain countries and probably in certain households, there's still a bit of a stigma around talking about mental health. And these are the things that we need to break down. We need to create safe spaces for young people, parents and schools to have these really open conversations and connect with one another to talk about mental health and what we can do to support.
And Children's Mental Health Week is all about having those connections this year and having those open discussions. So really from a school's point of view and from a teacher's point of view, how do we go about making those open discussions in the classroom?
I think we've got to embed the conversation, as you said there, in the classroom throughout the fabric of the school. I think often schools have, most schools have a schools counsellor, and the school counsellor is somewhere where you go if you're having a challenge. That can be a pretty challenging threshold to cross for a young person to go into that school's counsellor office. And again, it could be seen as defeatist. I think we've got to open up the conversations and almost view it as teaching. We teach math, science, English. We've got to teach about mental health. We've got to teach about the signs, how we support one another, how we can support ourselves with mental health, and have that woven in amongst the fabrics of schools, to have every teacher in the country, as a mental health first aider, if you like, to recognise the signs, to talk about them openly. And we've got to do that throughout from a young age in the school so we can have those conversations. And also, I think schools have got a place to support parents and carers and families to be able to have these conversations, because that can be a challenging thing for people to do, to open up that sort of dialogue. So I think we're on a good path. We've certainly made progress, but we've still got a long way to go.
Interesting what you say there. I mean, it is a generational thing. So really having that dialogue, as you say, with the families. And it's interesting as well, you point out about physical education, because of course we have a PE class in school, but we don't have a mental education class as such, is there?
No, there's not. I mean, we're an online school, so we educate a lot of young people who have mental health challenges or have had, and we run additional classes, things like anxiety management and a variety of other standalone classes. There's a huge amount that you can teach and educate young people, but you're absolutely right. We put so much focus on physical health that the brain, of course, is arguably the most important and certainly the most complex organ in the body. Why are we not putting it as much, if not more, focus on that? So I think the priority's got to shift a little bit. We've got to understand that we can't expect young people to come into school, thrive, achieve, and attain the academic qualifications we expect of them if we're not focusing on their mental health and giving them the tools that they need to be able to deal with mental health challenges, even if they're not prevalent now. When we get to exam times or we get to times of the year where there's particular stresses or anxieties, giving them the tools to empower them to be able to deal with these problems when they come about.
And you said before about bringing parents into the conversation. That can be very daunting for parents having conversations with children, but it is really important that they are part of the conversation as well. So how do you go about promoting that for them?
I think schools got to play a real role in that. And we would often, certainly remember as a teacher, we would bring parents into the school to workshops to teach them or to help educate them in terms of how children learn, how your young child is going to be learning in a maths class or a science class. We would give them tools to support with the learning at home. Why are we not doing that with regards to mental health? Bringing them into the schools to be able to understand what different mental health challenges there are, how to spot them, how to deal with them. And I think there's a lot of work going on in schools, a lot of great conversations happening in the classroom with teachers and young people. And I think those same conversations have got to be happening with teachers and school professionals, with parents and carers as well. So, I've always said you're not going to have change unless you are mirroring what's happening at school as you are at home and vice versa. So we can't expect schools are going to solve the problem. We've got to bring parents into this conversation as well.
I imagine as well for teachers, it's important to be looking for the signs within children. I think maybe historically you might see a child and just think that they're not into their schoolwork or they're not interested or they have a troublesome childhood for whatever reasons. But looking at mental health and that bigger perspective, there could be so many other reasons why they're finding difficulties. So really for a teacher to be able to spot those and acknowledge them and maybe having the conversation with the child, but then also to bring the parents in. And because I can just imagine, for a child that might be going through their life with anxiety, for example, or maybe some kind of trauma, that's obviously affecting their schoolwork. And if it's affecting their schoolwork, they're not going to get the education that they rightly deserve. So just having that simple conversation could alleviate years and years of that child going through real difficult times within the school system.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think it's about getting to the root cause of problems, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, sadness, whatever it might be. Sometimes there may not be a reason for that in particular, but often there is a root cause. And we found at Kings Inter High, with the number of young people that we have coming on board with us, there's often a trigger or there's often perhaps an environmental factor that we can look to change. But until we have those conversations, interventions until we can spot those mental health challenges, it's very difficult to make changes. So I think it's about empowering parents to be able to try and get to the root cause of the why. Why do we have this and what could we do to alleviate that? We find through our school, we've got a lot of young people who join us because the physical school environment is detrimental to their child's mental health. The big, classes, the busy corridors, the lunch hall that's packed and noisy, and it's just not a great place for some young people to be. And simply, we've some incredible transformations of young people simply by removing a young person from that environment, but allowing them to continue down their path of education. It can have such a profound impact on their mental well-being. And in turn, and we've seen this time and time again throughout the years that we've been running, it can have a really positive impact on their academic attainment just by being happier.
I guess the one-size-fits-all doesn't apply anymore. We have to be looking at the individual child. And as you say, it could be a complex situation, but it may be just a certain situation that the child is finding things difficult with, where just being able to alleviate that and having that conversation can just change completely their whole attitude to how their school life is. It's just amazing. For Children's Mental Health Week, if people want to find out more, or especially for parents as well, if they want to start that dialogue and have that conversation, what's the best place for them to find that information?
Yeah, there's some great information at childrensmentalhealthweek.org.uk, which is the main website for the campaign. Lots of information on there and signposts towards places where families, young people, children, and indeed schools can get support. So childrensmentalhealthweek.org.uk.
So people can go on there and find out more. Tom Crombie from King's Inter High, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Thank you very much indeed.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
Next, it's time to hear from A Space to Speak Your Mind's contributor Nathan on how to cope with bereavement as the third National Day of Reflection approaches.
For a third year running, charity Marie Curie is leading the National Day of Reflection, a unique day to spotlight the grief which affects millions of us and encourage us to open up. Taking place on the 23rd of March, marking 3 years since the UK went into its first lockdown, the day stands as a chance to reflect on our collective grief experienced during the pandemic, when the Queen passed, and within our own personal lives. Jane Murray is a bereavement counsellor for Marie Curie and joins me now. So Jane, why is it so important that we open up about our grief?
It's really important that people have an opportunity to share their feelings, share their vulnerabilities with each other and not keep it locked away inside them. If we don't talk about our feelings and it has nowhere to go, it just builds up inside us and may come out physically in other ways. So we might, turn up at the GPs with tummy aches and headaches and heart palpitations. So grief emotions can affect you in a physical way. And, I've had experience of people who for years have never spoken to anyone about a grief that they've experienced. They've held it all inside, and they sadly have gone down the road of needing, they've been diagnosed with clinical depression and needed medication because of it. So being able to have the courage to talk about your feelings as they are happening is the best practice. It's the best way of looking after yourself, good self-care.
And of course, obviously, talking about your own grief is very important, but speaking to others about theirs is equally as important. But it's a tricky subject to approach. So what tips and advice do you have for those who want to talk to bereaved friends or family members?
When we see each other, we say, hello, how are you? And really, we don't expect a reply. We don't expect them to say, well, let me tell you what's going on. So, when you know that you're with someone, a friend, family member who's experienced a loss, and you say to them, hello, how are you? They'll reply, yeah, I'm okay. Now, if you just follow that up with a, and how are you really? You are more likely to get a response. You might see them fill up with tears, but they might just have that courage to say, well, actually, I'm not doing too good. So being able to just follow it up with those few words, and how are you really? You don't have to have profound things to say to someone who is grieving. You don't have to come out with and try and fix them. Nothing can fix them, only time and being able to express their emotions. The most important thing is for you to be alongside them, to be there for them, and to let them know that you're there for them. Go for a walk with them. You don't have to talk necessarily, but encourage them to talk if they want to. I had a lady only yesterday who said to me what benefits she got from walking with a friend who said they were walking and saw the snowdrops, and that she said, oh, your mom would have loved the snowdrops, wouldn't she? Now, something as simple as that opened her up and gave her permission to talk about her mom. It was emotional, but something as simple as that works wonders.
So the National Day of Reflection, can you tell us a little bit about why it was first set up 3 years ago?
The first National Day, we were in our second year of COVID, and we all can remember those times. That first year was horrendous for us all. You might remember we were under lots of restrictions. We couldn't see each other. We could only go out 1 hour a day. We weren't allowed to go to funerals. We couldn't visit people in hospital, and certainly in our hospices for a period of time, we didn't allow any visitors to protect our patients and staff. And the emotion that was building up in people, it was affecting their mental health greatly. So Marie Curie came together that first year. We need a day that people can come together and express their emotion and how they are feeling, and to remember the people who have died. This is our third year this year, and we still want people to come together and have that time to remember loved ones who have died at any time from any illness. A day where you can come and remember and reflect and be sad and be comforted in a compassionate way by those around you. Last year, when the Queen died in September, it really underpinned for Marie Curie that this day is needed. We all witnessed the outpouring of grief nationally, particularly that week between the death and the funeral, the Elizabeth line, people queuing. Now, those thousands of people, most of them had not met the Queen, but they were grieving for their own personal losses. The Queen's death rippled through them, and they remembered people who they had lost. So they were grieving for their personal losses, not necessarily for the Queen, but it was an accepted time. You were encouraged to be mourning in that week. Nobody looked at you if you were vulnerable. Nobody looked at you if you were teary. Strangers were comforting each other. And that really has underpinned that we need this day where people have permission in society to come together, to grieve, to be vulnerable, and to remember. This year, we want people to connect not only with the memories of the people who have died, but to connect with each other in a compassionate way. Reach out and care for people alongside you, even strangers.
And as you just talked about, a theme over the last few years has been this sense of collected grief. Obviously, we had the pandemic, and we had the Queen passing, as you said, in September last year. It's a very different sense of grief compared to what you have personally when you lose a loved one or a family member, a friend, colleague even. How do you approach that differently then? Like, how do you open up to someone that's feeling this collective sense of grief, this grief for someone they've never met before? What's the changing conversation you have there?
I think just acknowledging, not ignoring what you're seeing in front of you with someone, saying to someone, okay, yes, are you okay? I can see that you're feeling sad. It only takes a few words and people will open up to you, usually. By you being compassionate and showing empathy to others, it really encourages them to talk to you. So this collective grief, we can't put ourselves in each other's shoes and experience what they've experienced. But grief overwhelms us all. It's individual, but we all go through the same kind of feelings and certainly experience the same sadness. So being able to be alongside someone, even a stranger, and reach out to them and just show that you care, that's the biggest thing.
And Marie Curie, of course, leading the National Day of Reflection. What events or things are being put on around the country to help people open up and commemorate this day?
If people want to go onto the Marie Curie website, mariecurie.org.uk, there's a wealth of information on there about the National Day. You can follow links for your particular geographical area to see events that are happening in your area. You can sign up to listen to podcasts from various celebrities on the day. We are having a minute silence at midday. You can either follow that on the website, or you might hold your own minute silence if you work or with colleagues or with family, or your own. We want that minute silence to be a time where people will stop and they will just remember, connect with their memories, connect with what's going on inside them, connect with each other. And we're encouraging businesses and certainly in our hospice to have walls of reflection where you can write a message, put a photo up of the people who have died. And you can do that in your own home. You could put a photo, have a photo up, write a message or light a candle for the person or people who have died close to you. And that will be your own personal wall of reflection.
bereavement counsellor Jane Murray there, here with us on A Space to Speak Your Mind, talking about the National Day of Reflection. Thanks so much for your time, Jane.
Thank you for inviting Marie Curie.
Now it's time to talk to A Space to Speak Your Mind's JJ on how gaming helps his well-being.
A Space to Speak Your Mind with Cornwall Mind.
JJ, welcome to the show.
Hello there, everyone. How's it going?
Now, today we're talking about gaming, and you're a big gamer. Now, I've not been to gaming for a long time, and I know it's really good for our well-being because there's so much that you can do within gaming. So just give me a brief explanation about what gaming means to you and what you get from it.
Well, gaming means a great place to escape and just escape the real world, meet new people, have fun, play different characters, and just have an absolute blast.
What kind of games do you play?
My games, I actually play RPGs, which are role-playing games, and first-person shooter games, FPS shooting games. So stuff like Call of Duty, Battlefield, all that type of stuff. I just love playing them.
And have you been playing games all your life? What was the first game that you really remember playing?
Oh, my very first game was the original Sonic game, which I believe was on the SNES, I think.
Yeah, I remember it on the Mega Drive. That's the game that I played on the original Mega Drive, the Sonic games. And then it did cross over, I think, didn't it? Because we can go into the whole technicalities, but Sega and Nintendo were the big rivals at the time. But I think they licensed the Sonic project over to Nintendo, so they now own the characters, don't they?
Yes, it was all just pure madness. But yeah, I remember playing Sonic was my very first game.
And those games, kind of one-player games, but there was the option to play with someone else in the room, wasn't there, back in the day? But now things have changed so much because you can play with anyone across the world. Now, for someone like me who hasn't gamed for so long, tell us about how it all works and how you connect with people and the kind of games that you play and how that all works.
Well, to start off with, because I used to study games design for industry over at Cornwall College, which was literally the whole basis of how a game is made, it is very tricky to do. There's a lot of 3D modeling to do, there's a lot of coding, all sorts of stuff that goes in, and then obviously there's the animation, the sound effects, all the music, all sorts. What you have to do just to make a perfectly good game.
Now, this is interesting because as well as playing games, you're obviously telling us there about how you're actually quite involved in the behind the scenes. So you've done bits in the past with your college work where you've actually made the music and the sounds behind the games, haven't you?
Yes, I've made my own sound effects, which I still love doing. One of the things I did create was a pirate ship battle scene. So I had two ships going together, fighting with cannons, all sorts, and you can also hear the sails, the wind, the rain, everything that you would actually normally hear in a game when you're there listening to it. It's the ambience.
And that's so important with gaming, isn't it? The effects, the music, everything that comes to it. And again, talking about our well-being, music's so powerful, and having that within the game, and especially being able to make it yourself, that must feel a real buzz to have that, and then to put it out there that other people can then hear when they're playing the game and get the same maybe feeling that you got when you originally created it.
Yeah, I absolutely loved editing that sound effect, because I would always tell my friends, hey, do you want to have a listen to my sound effect that I've been busy grinding to make? And every time they've always said, wow, I just love doing it.
And talking there, because gaming is such a social element, back to what we were saying before, when you come to actually play the game, you can connect around the world to so many different people. What's that experience like? Do you have friends that you constantly seek out and play the games with, or is it a case that every time you play you're looking for someone new and you're building up the social element as you go along?
Well, that's actually a bit of a mixture of both, really, because I have some friends who are from over in the States area, including like Canada, some parts of America. I have a very good friend that lives up in Scotland who I play with a lot. We play Call of Duty together, and it's just all amazing that we all come together and we just have a blast.
And when you're playing the games, is it constantly talking about what's going on in the game, or do you get the chance to have a bit of a conversation just about your daily lives as well? Because I can imagine that would be quite a therapeutic thing, that there's someone else over the other side of the world that you can just say, hey, I'm kind of doing this today. Or is it just like, no, we're focusing on the game, we need to be like really into it?
No, we just full on focus on just the game itself. So obviously if I'm playing something like Call of Duty, I'm helping doing call-outs and, hey, he's over there.
But that's great though, isn't it? Because that can take you away from your daily things that you're kind of concerned about. You can just kind of zoning purely on the game and be in a completely different world.
Yes, definitely. And when I was living with my mum and dad, they found out that I had 2 different modes. So I've got like the normal JJ, and then as soon as I go into a game like Call of Duty, there was a completely whole different person.
Yeah. So for someone who hasn't done gaming before and maybe thinking about doing it and think, oh, do you know what, I don't know, maybe tell us about what you get out of it and why they should get involved.
To do gaming is by far the best thing ever. You're inside, you're not doing anything stupid. Whereas with gaming, you're in your own little world and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it has that release and it gives you the opportunity to be in a completely different world, something you would never experience otherwise. So it's really good. And we're into 2023 now. I know there's some new games coming up. What are you most looking forward to, and what's the big highlights as we're getting into the year?
Well, I'm actually looking forward to April because that's when I get my copy of Hogwarts Legacy. I've heard so much about it because at the moment it's all on the next-gen consoles, so on PS5 and the latest Xbox and also on PC, but unfortunately they have to wait until April, which I don't know why, to bring it on to PS4. But I can't wait because I've seen so many videos and I cannot wait to be going about in Hogwarts as a wizard.
I think it's great. I mean, I play very basic games on my phone and on my iPad. I'd love to get back in. When I was younger, I do remember I'd spend hours and hours just playing games, and I used to enjoy it so much. And for me as well, if you'd had, as a kid, a tough day at school and you come home and you just stick on the computer and time would just go by so much. Thank you so much for talking about gaming and how you benefit from it, and it's really good to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
In a recent survey, more than a third of people were unaware of how former military personnel we have in the UK, as ONS data signals that 7% of households across the UK have one or more veterans residing. While the vast majority of those leaving the armed forces go on to lead fulfilling and rewarding lives, there is a small but significant group who develop trauma-related mental health problems and struggle to leave the battlefield behind. Here to tell me more is Robert Marsh, who's the Director of Fundraising for the Combat Stress charity. Good to have you here, Robert.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So can you tell me a bit about how poor mental health can affect combat soldiers?
Well, I think it's first important to say that the vast majority of people who serve in the armed forces do so and have a really positive experience. And then when they leave, go on to have fulfilling lives and careers in civilian street. But there is a small, significant minority that need help with their mental health issues. And we're more at the complex end. So there is now a diagnosis of complex PTSD, but we also see veterans with PTSD with comorbid anxiety and depression and those sorts of things. But the very common depiction of PTSD is that which we see in TV and films, which is flashbacks, nightmares, those sorts of things. But it can manifest in other ways, principally a lack of sleep or very disturbed sleep. And of course, we know that sleep is incredibly restorative and vital for good health, both physical and mental. Also raised anxiety levels to the extent that people start sweating or have a raised heart rate. And then there's another thing called hypervigilance, where people are almost living their lives in a very soldierly way. So looking for exits, looking on rooftops for snipers, thinking about mines or tripwires, those sorts of things. It's almost a sort of adrenaline-fueled existence, which must be absolutely exhausting. I remember a veteran saying to me that going to bed at night was absolutely dreadful because he knew what was coming, which was the disturbed sleep and the flashbacks and all of those associated symptoms. So the good news is there is help out there via our website, combatstress.org.uk, and there is lots of self-guided online resources via the website. So that satisfies a lot of people. Or indeed, there is our helpline, which is 0800 138 1619. And all of the people who pick up the calls are trained counsellors, and they can begin the assessment of whether a veteran is suitable to take part in one of our specialist treatment programs. So there is help out there. And like any medical condition, the sooner you seek help, the better it will be in the end.
I was going to say, how important is it really for those that have experienced PTSD to seek help? Because I imagine within the military, it's not something that maybe comes natural.
No, that's a very good question. And on average, veterans come to us 13 years after they've left the armed services, by which time most of the things that you and I sort of rely on for a normal existence, like friends, relationships, a job, not self-medicating with alcohol or drugs, those are the things that veterans present to us with after that particular time has elapsed. And of course, those need unraveling before we can start, really working on their trauma. So it is really, really important for veterans to seek help. But the military culture is such that there is a prevailing sense of you've got to crack on, you just got to get on with it. And I understand that. And it's a difficult furrow for the military to plough. But they are getting so good at doing this now in terms of parity of esteem between physical health and mental health. And there are other strategies that they have put in place, like TRIM, which is trauma risk management, a buddy-buddy system. So really focusing on individuals' mental well-being, and then decompressing after operational tours and all those sorts of things. It's just normalizing it and allowing people to say, I've got a problem, and actually not seeing it as a stigma or being weak. And in fact, actually asking for help often is very courageous.
And I'm just wondering, how common is those effects of PTSD for veterans? Because I'm thinking if it is a common factor, then really within the buddy-buddy system and being open, you would hope that people were talking about it more.
Yeah, the numbers aren't really clear. That's, again, one of the issues. But it's good to see that in the last census, the tick box for "Are you a veteran?" has now appeared. So we're beginning to get our arms around the size of the veteran population, which in the UK is now over 1.5 million, but also those that are suffering with mental ill health as a result of their service. So we also carry out our own research and work closely with the King's Centre for Military Mental Health Studies. And I think, if I recall, the figure for, it's only if you've been in a combat operation, it's 20% are likely to suffer with some form of mental health problem. But the converse to that is that being in the military is somewhat protective of your mental health. So it's a complicated picture, certainly.
So tell me more about March in March. What is it and what are you hoping to achieve?
So March in March is a really easily accessible virtual challenge. The concept is to walk or run 10 miles on any day in March. And you can do it on your own. You can do it with your dog. In fact, I'm here in the studio with my dog today. I'm going to definitely do it in March with Bosco. So family, friends, and actually a lot of companies are getting involved as well because they like the mental health benefits of exercise, and walking is so easy. And also being outside in the country and taking in the fresh air. You can sign up for free via our website, which is marchinmarch.co.uk. So March in March, all one word, .co.uk. You can sign up for free, as I've said, and we're encouraging people to do some fundraising. I need to raise £10 million a year to provide the life-changing mental health programs that we have. And so we're encouraging people to fundraise. If they get to a certain level and complete the 10 miles in March, then we'll send them a medal. So we're really looking forward to people signing up.
Lots to look forward to, and hopefully people can register and take part. So for now, thank you to Robert Marsh, who's the Director of Fundraising for the charity Combat Stress. Thank you so much, Robert.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a space to speak your mind, and let's find out what's happening at Cornwall Mind this month with Joe.
A space to speak your mind.
So we're into spring already, and we're really excited because we've got our Hope Walks project, which is a free walking group for people who've been affected by the loss of someone close to them who may have died by suicide. We currently offer walks once a month in Trillissick Gardens near Truro and Lanhydrock near Bodmin, but we're expanding Hope Walks, and we're going to be offering walks in Helston and Newquay, and also we're going to be offering twilight walks, which will take place at Trillissick Gardens from about 6 o'clock, because obviously some people work and they can't access our day programmes. So there'll be lots more details on our website to find out about those. We do have spaces. We're taking referrals for some of our wellbeing groups. So if you fancy joining one of our gardening or allotment groups, we've got one in Bodmin and one in Falmouth. We offer a 6-month programme to get involved with growing mostly vegetables, and you do get to take some home to eat, which is always good. We've got a brilliant walking group in Newquay and a music group in Bodmin, and also we've got an online social cafe We do realise that not everyone can attend one of our face-to-face community cafes, so we offer a Monday morning social cafe via Zoom, just for an hour, but it's a chance to get together with people and just have a chat and get a little bit of support from the comfort of your home. And don't forget, we have our community cafes, which are running once a month, and they are in Falmouth, Truro, St Austell, Newquay, Looe, Liskeard and Camborne, and they're open to everyone. You literally can just turn up. You don't have to get a referral or book or anything like that. We'd be really pleased to see you. If you want to get involved with any of our groups, you can email us at info@cornwallmind.org. You can go onto our website. We've got a What's On calendar, which lists all our community cafes on the days, times and locations they're running each month. Follow us on social media too. We're on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn at Cornwall Mind, and visit our website is cornwallmind.org.
That's all for this month's show. Don't forget you can hear any of our previous shows on the podcast right now. Just search for A Space to Speak Your Mind. And also, while you're on there, if you can just like and subscribe, you can hear the next show as soon as it's available. Have a great March, and thanks once again for listening to A Space to Speak Your Mind.
If you missed anything on today's show, you can download the podcast right now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Amazon Podcasts, and tune in.
For more support and more information for better mental health, visit cornwallmind.org or call the Mind Helpline during office hours on 0300 123 3393.
There is a new 24/7 local urgent mental health response phone line. It's free to access by anyone, any age on 0800 038 5300.
And call the Samaritans anytime for free on 116 123.
If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can get in contact. Just email aspacetospeakyourmind@gmail.com.
Or you can also follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook.